Welcome to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. I'm Stuart Wellborn, a British author and former therapist, and each week I sit down with Wa-Na-Nee-Che, a spiritual elder from Turtle Island, to explore the deeper truths behind healing, ceremony, and connection to Source.
The message that he gave was that there's great changes coming. And that humans better prepare. Now, kind of the message was that people are going to have to start learning how to figure out who they are. Because when the time comes, those people who have not found themselves may end up losing their ascension. But people are too into other things. And I think that's why I was given a message by an individual who had a vision that basically said that if people don't learn to connect, then 70 to 75% of the people in the world are going to disappear. And I don't know if you've been watching, but the guy, that time traveler, I can't remember his name, but he said he went into the future and he was in Spain and there were no people. The population was completely wiped out. I think it's Gerard was his name. I'm not sure. But, some of the things that are going off, like, I don't know if you remember the blind lady from, I don't know, I don't think she's from Russia. I think she was from Romania. I'm not sure. But she makes predictions that look like they're coming pretty damn close to being true. They used to call her the Astrodamus because she used to get quite powerful visions. One of the things that I was asked was that can people use animals to use them in a negative way? And yes, animals can be utilized in a negative way. But a lot of times they are tricked into it by the person who basically has negative energy. Will utilize ways to convince the animals that they have to do things for them. And the best way to deal with that is not to give them an inch. Just say, look, you're here, you're spying on me, there's nothing to spy on. The person who sent you is not a very nice person. So you need to go back and deal with that individual because he misled you. So a lot of times you explain things to them. It's like when I was in South Dakota, in the Black Hills, I had a family from England. And we sat there, and the guy was actually a friend of mine. And he had some students there, and they had a little fire going. And they were going to have a sweat lodge. And I felt something was very, very wrong by the way they were doing things. And I think my friend showed them the wrong way. But anyway, because with negative energy, I took my black pipe out and I filled it to get rid of all the negative energy and to bring in positive energy. And what was so funny is that they went running to my friend and told him that I had filled the pipe. So he wanted to talk to me. He said, who gave you permission to fill that pipe at my fire? And I said, well, I called him by his name and I said, you don't decide who fills the pipe. I said, the pipe was instructed for me to fill the pipe. And it didn't come from you. It came from the Creator. And that's why I filled the pipe. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but what he said ended our friendship. And I said, I can't deal with people who utilize negative energy to capture people. So I'm leaving. You can't leave. I said, watch me. He was in his shop down in Rapid City, and I was up at his house. So he threatened the family I was with, and I said, don't worry about it. I said, you're protected. Let's go. So we got into my van and we took off. As we were leaving South Dakota, I happened to look and there was 3 natives on horses coming towards me. And they were spirits. And they said, we came after you because of what you did over at this person's sweat lodge. I said, no, hold on for a minute. Let me explain something to you. So I explained the whole situation to them, and they looked at each other, looked at me, said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. And they went after him. So a lot of times if you explain, that you've done nothing wrong and you want to know, tell them, why are you here? 90% of the time, they're going to understand and they're going to stop bothering you. But then all you have to basically do is that if they come like that, just burn some sage because they can't stick around.
Oh, that clears spirits away then, does it, sage?
Yeah, because there's people out there that'll utilize the spirits in a negative way. And then if a lot of times people get scared. Rather than getting scared, you have to confront them and tell them, why are you here? Then they say whatever they different. Well, let me explain something to you. And you explain that you have a good heart, that you're very connected, and they'll understand. And then they go back and get the person who sent them.
Question for you, just based on what you just said. You said 90% of the time they'll understand. What happens on the other 10% then?
It's like they go back at even and say, we're back.
Now, you started off talking about animals being used negatively. Was you on about like animal spirit guides or literal live animals?
No, live animals.
Right. So in what way would somebody use them negatively?
And they connect with their energy. And then they ask them to do things.
Such as to do what though? Give examples.
If they want to attack somebody, then they explain to them that this person did something wrong when they didn't do anything wrong. And then they send them after them. That's why I said you can't run, you have to confront it. If you don't confront it, then they sit there and they say, oh, it's true.
And that's a literal, like, for example, somebody using a dog to attack you then.
Yeah, because a lot of times the Lakota used to use turtle doves as spies. And they used to use spiders as spies. And I was laughing at Medicine Bear Chief one time, and there was a certain color. I think it's black. And he sat there and was sitting by his foot. He said, are you spying on me? Well, no more. And he stamped it. He said, you have to take it back to whoever sent you. But he used to do a lot of crazy things, Medicine Bear Chief. I used to laugh at him all the time. But he said one time, he said, Dennis, why I like you so much? You're like a brother. I said, why? You're the only person that could make me laugh. He was really if you meet him, you'd step a couple of steps back, just being afraid of him. Because he was about 6'7", and he looked like a bear, and he was always mad.
Yeah, someone you don't want to meet down a dark alley then.
Yeah. But he came from Wapo Island, but originally he came from the Blackfoot tribe.
Right, since we've talked of animals, that kind of does tie into the question I was going to ask you, because I wanted to talk about some of the traditional stuff. Because we've talked about feathers and war bonnets and things like that in the past. One thing we haven't talked about, though, totem poles. What are their purpose? And do they exist as you see them in the movies or not?
Yeah, but a lot of that was your eastern tribes, Alaska, Washington, Oregon, more or less the people along the coast up north. And they put the totem pole up to represent the animal world and the animal energy that works with them. So a lot of the totem poles was basically, I believe, was the function of the medicine person, the spiritual person. And so down through history, they had certain things that happened that basically, like say the crow helped them. The crow helped them find land, find food. And then of course the other ones too, like the eagle, the bear, the fox, they all represented certain energies that had helped the tribe at one time. So then they made a totem of it.
And what was the purpose of the pole, though? Was it just giving thanks, or was it to attract the energies, or what?
Now, a lot of it was for attraction, and a lot of it was for protection and for gaining knowledge that they would basically offer food and everything. And hopefully a bear will come into their vision and show them things, or an eagle will give them sight of something that they don't understand. So each animal represents certain things, so they would honor them. And that's why the totem pole came. They honored these particular energies.
Now, I may be wrong on this, but I heard somewhere years ago that because sometimes you see like the face of a man or whatever, that was always on the bottom for some reason. And
Pardon?
then I read or heard somewhere that on a totem pole sometimes there's a like a human looking face, and that should always be on the bottom.
Well, that was basically to represent human beings
Yeah, but why were they on the bottom? I can't remember.
because they have to seek the knowledge of everything above them.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So if that's a what did you say, East Coast thing, totem
Yeah,
poles? Did the other tribes in other areas have anything similar?
yeah. Well, in different forms, as you were saying, because sometimes they used to have a staff with a certain animal on the staff, or they would make the staff with hawk claws or eagle claws, so that the staff itself represented certain energies, and that they would use those energies to call on them when they used the staff.
Okay, I'm going back to an episode that months ago. Matthew mentioned this because I wasn't aware of it. He mentioned it towards the end of the episode because you mentioned bears, crow, all those kind of animals, but you mentioned that dragons were part of your ancestors' mythology. Could you elaborate on how dragons appear in your
Well, the
culture?
dragon to go back, was a very special energy. And it's just like, we used to talk about the giant people, and everybody laughed at us, and they laughed about dragons. Now they're finding skeletons that represent dragons, and it was in Kimona.
Yeah, but just symbolically, was the dragon in your culture though?
Well, it all depends on what color it was. The color itself represented the the one that usually follows Matthew is usually the red dragon. So he basically holds the knowledge of the red dragon. I carry the energy of the golden dragon. And in one of my visions, I was in England. I traveled in energy wise. I was in here in Colorado, and my energy took me to England, and there was this skinny looking guard, but he was tenacious. You can't do this, you can't do that. And he had his little spike and everything. And then I dug into the ground and I found a black egg, a white egg, a red egg, and a silver egg. And they hatched. The black one hatched first, then the red one hatched, and they fought, which basically goes back to your own history of Pendragon. He had the symbol of the red dragon. And as they were fighting, I said, something's got to stop. And I picked up the silver one, and the silver one hatched. And of all people that came out of there was Merlin. And he sat there with his staff and he said, you will stop fighting now, or I will destroy both of you. And they just quit. And then I woke up. So the silver one basically represented Merlin's power. A lot of people, yeah, it's so far back that a lot of people really don't even remember the dragons anymore. But they do in our winter counts, they talk about a dragon. And they talk about one dragon that was bigger than an aircraft carrier. And he ever came to you in real life, you're by the ocean, and he came out of the ocean, and he gave you part of his, how would you call it, scale. He handed it to you, it would heal anything. But there are stories, got to go back and talk about the dragon of the sea.
Well, that's what I was saying. Dragons appear in most mythologies, but it's not
Yeah,
one that you normally associate with your ancestors. That's why I was
yeah,
asking.
yeah. They're very powerful beings, but again, they were also spiritual beings, and that what actually happened, according to medieval, is that they would go out seek them to kill them. That's why I really kind of enjoyed the one. What was it called? Dragonheart, the movie.
Yeah,
The voice was by what's his name? Oh, James Bond. What was his name?
Sean Connery.
John Connery. He was a voice, and I learned quite a bit about the dragon itself, and picked up some information that I quite couldn't understand the dragon itself until that movie. Then I understood it.
Are you going to share what you understand about dragons then? Don't keep it to yourself.
All I know, all I can say is they're out there, and if they come to you, they'll have a special message for you. And that's really all you have to know about the dragon, is that if they come to you, listen to what they say.
I have a story about dragons if you're interested. Right? When I was in, this is around 2000, I think it was, I was in a reenactment society at Tutbury Castle. So that meant I dressed up as a knight and, we sword fighting and all that kind of stuff. I was the Black Knight, which was the best role. However, the custodian of Tutbury Castle at the time was
Uh,
ex-army. He dug out the moat kind of thing and found like a goddess statue, an old, really old one where, the mother's statue, should I say, the big boobs and the big belly. Found all
mhm.
sorts of things. And one time he was talking to me and my friend in the cafe, and there's no reason for him to be lying or winding us up. But the story was that somebody he knew went into the Derbyshire Peak District with this other guy who was quite old. And they went underground, and there was all these different kind of hidden doorways that you needed to put a staff in to move it. And they went, it took them hours to get there. And eventually they came to a place, and there was a dragon there under Derbyshire Dales. And the old guy had brought the new guy to take over as the custodian.
Uh-huh.
of the dragons. Not the custodian of the castle, that he was telling the story, but the younger guy shit himself and decided not to be the be the person that looked after the dragons. And I'm like, fucking hell, I would have done it. But it's an interesting story, and he told it believably. Do you think he was
Uh-huh.
telling the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot of times the symbolism comes into play then about who you are in the vision, and he was seeking knowledge. So the knowledge that he was seeking could only be answered by a dragon.
No, this was literal dragons that they saw.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't like a vision or out. They actually went under Derbyshire, and there were real dragons. And like basically, the old guy was the person protecting them
Uh-huh.
from humans finding out that they existed.
Existed, yeah. Well, you got to remember, once they find out that something existed, they wanted to study it, they want to carve it up, they want to figure out why it's functioning and why it's there.
Yeah, and then obviously there's the old myths of dragon slaying. If they actually happened, then it makes sense that if there are a few left, they'd want to protect him. But it was
Yeah.
an interesting story he told. It sounded believable, but
Well, have you watched The House of Dragons?
no.
You should watch it because it's what they do to dragons by controlling them. And
Right.
it kind of gives you an insight on how they misuse the dragons.
Like people misuse everything, I guess. But
And that's why the dragons probably went into hiding because they knew that the humans would not treat them right and that they would use them for evil means.
yeah, well, as I was going to say, apparently, there are Great Lakes under the Derbyshire Peak District, which potentially connect to the sea. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's true because I'm not a geologist, but he certainly told a believable story, even
Yeah.
though the story was second hand. And it also, when people go potholing and all that, if they get too close to the dragons, they tend to go missing and
Yeah.
become dragon dinner.
Well, the first thing too is if you see a dragon, society says you're crazy. So, it's installed into your brain. So you don't want to basically believe what you actually see. And you make it into, oh, it's a hallucination.
Well, I'm a bit like Carl Jung. I like to have an open mind. I
Yeah.
don't rule these things out. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, does it?
I wish they would have had a little level here on the side of your head, and then you could sit there and flush your brain all the time. Did you say there was a couple of questions?
No, no, it's just me. Unless, I mean, we have got somebody with us live. If you've got a question, put it in the chat and I will put it to
Well, I'm
Wa-Na-Nee-Che.
kind of, in one way too, I'm kind of proud of Linda now because she's finally starting to understand that she has the power to deal with things.
That's probably her that's live.
Yeah, it's still a little bit scary to her, but she's starting to realize that she has power over it.
Well, I was talking about native things, wasn't I? Traditional things. We've covered totem poles. We've covered war bonnets. Now, there was something of yours that you were glad I still had. Remember when you gave me all your stuff to look after, and a lot of it got
Yeah,
damaged, and I gave it your back. But the choker, was it a choker or something?
yeah.
What's the significance of the choker then, spiritually and literally, or whatever?
Spiritually, it's for protection of your chakra, and it's just like you had a chakra protector there, but you also had other things that you wore for protection,
Such as?
like one of these. Eh?
Is that a medicine pouch?
Yeah,
Can you tell me
that's,
what's in there, or is it secret?
that's, it's whatever you put in there is sacred, and you really can't tell people. but you can show other people what to use and how to use it, because once you use it and put it in here, it's sealed. You can't open it.
Would you like to elaborate on how to make one and put stuff in it then?
Well, I had some very special things I put in another medicine pouch that were given to me by Fool's Crow, and I wore it all the time. I'd only take it off to take a shower. And one night I sat there and I asked a question. I held it and asked a question and went to bed. So I got up the next morning, it was gone. And I tore the bed apart. I tore that room apart. I said, I had it when I went to sleep. Where the hell is it? And I searched almost half a day for it all. Everything that you could search, I searched. And I sat there and said, well, I can't do it anymore. I said, it's gone. So it happened about a week or 2 weeks later. I was over in the Wounded Knee area, and that's where Fool's Crow lived. So I always go see him when I was in that area. He used to say, my friend from Denver. So we sat there, and I brought Doug White with me to interpret because he wouldn't talk English. It was all in Lakota language. So I asked him, I said, tell him that the pouch and the stuff that you gave me to put in the pouch, I said I was wearing it and it disappeared. And I said, I couldn't find it. And he laughed and he went like this. I looked at him and he said, the reason you can't find it, he said, it went inside of you. I said, once you learn certain things, I said, and you don't have anything more to learn with that particular medicine pouch, it will go inside of you. And it becomes part of you. And he said, I'll show you what I mean. So he held his hand out. There's nothing in his hand. And he made a fist, and then he opened it again. There was a stone in his hand. He said, this is one of the stones that's inside of me. And I just brought it out to show you. And then he closed his hand again, and he opened his hand, it was gone.
Whoa.
So then that's when you start believing, yeah, okay. But it went inside of me, so I don't have to look for it anymore.
Right. I was asking for the listeners and viewers, could you talk about how to make one and what to include in it, or would you like to save that for next week's episode? Because we've got 7 minutes left.
Okay, making medicine bags?
Yeah, medicine pouch.
Well, some of the main ingredients you would put in there would be sage, because sage is protection. Cedar, flat cedar, because it's a virus killer. And you would put, sage, and then tobacco as an offering for whoever comes and helps you. That tobacco is an offering to them. And then you have like certain things, like certain stones, certain crystals, certain objects that you feel very connected to. You can put that into the medicine pouch. But then once you get all that stuff, you have to talk to every one of them. Let them know why you're putting it into the bag. Because once you seal it, you can't open it.
And how do you seal it so it can't be opened?
I sew it closed. I don't know if you can see it. Is it? The on top
Oh, yeah.
where it's completely, it can't be opened.
And that's leather, is it?
Pardon?
Is it leather?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I made a good deal on it because I was going to go buy a pouch and they wanted $19 for it. And I said, I looked at it, I said, it just doesn't feel right. And I said, well, I need to make one, but I said, until the right deal comes along. So I happened to walk by this counter and there was a piece of leather about, I would say, 6 feet by 4 feet. And it was on sale, 70% off. So I picked it up for $60, but it'll make about 100 medicine bags.
You still got the leather?
Pardon?
Do you still have the leather?
Yeah.
Just curious,
Yeah.
I'm asking you
Yeah.
whether you want to do this or not, but next week, because we've covered a lot of the things and we're repeating ourselves on certain things,
Yeah.
how about next week you show how to make one and bring the things that you would include and
Okay.
go through what you'd actually say? Because you said speak to the herbs. We could
Yeah.
do that for an episode next week. How do you
Yeah.
feel about
I
that?
can put the certain herbs in there, but I won't seal it because I'll be making it for a friend of mine, Victor. So
Okay,
if he wants to put certain things in there for himself, then I'll seal it.
but you could demonstrate the process
Yeah.
apart from the sealing and what you would say to the herbs.
Yeah, I can do that.
We'll do that next week then, because
Okay.
we've only got a few minutes left now, and I think that would be quite interesting and something different for
Yeah.
regular viewers,
I kind of
viewers and listeners.
I kind of invented a way to make it a lot easier because sometimes the needle is really, really hard to get through that leather.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So I went to the hardware store and I found myself a really small drill bit.
Drill
So
the
when I got
holes.
back, I put it in the drill and everything, and it was perfect.
Ah.
The needle went in there very easily.
Well, being a Navy man, I'd use a marlin spike.
Yeah, 'cause you do have a punch that you can use, but it's not quite the same size that you need. It makes too big a hole. So that drill really came in handy because it was a perfect size.
So you've got your medicine pouch, you've got your choker that protects your voice, throat chakra.
Yeah,
Do you wear anything round the waist for the lower chakras then to protect you?
yeah, a belt.
Yeah, but do you do anything to the
You,
belt to make it
well, if
protective?
people sometimes when you go places
Sorry.
at your events, and people will use bad energy sometimes on you. So if you get a belt like that, what do they call it, concho belts, made out of silver,
All right.
and if you wear that, it it takes care of any negative energy that they try to throw on you.
All right.
You, of course, you had if you would look on the what's called, I also wore a beaded belt, and that was basically again for protection because you got to remember you have to. That's where the life force energy is. So you use certain things to make sure that you protect your energy at all times.
So they're more for spiritual protection than physical
Yeah,
protection.
yeah. Well, both physical and spiritual.
Right. Because sadly, they didn't protect you too well when the Europeans came over, did they?
Yeah. Oh, how'd you like that little film I sent you?
Yeah, that was funny. Especially like when the British came at the very end, it was just like, no.
Nice. Yeah, he was pretty good though. Did you act in Dance with the Wolf? I sure did. Who were you? Kevin Costner.
Right. Any final thoughts? Because my cat's back screaming, so I may as well. We're into our final minute anyway. Final thoughts, and then we'll end the broadcast.
If people are, I know I've gotten quite a few people saying they're now watching the broadcast and everything, and they're very pleased with it. But that's the ones that need to get it to their friends, and they need to tell their friends, listen to it, then they can make up their own mind. But to get them to listen to it, because we're running out of time. And the lady, like I said, the Nostradamus of that world, talked about the same thing I talked about: earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts, famine. That I've seen way back that it was coming if we didn't change our ways. And the thing that they also said, that's why I was always interested when I used to hear the Catholics say, "Go out and populate." I think there was a time to stop. Because we're dealing with what 8.5 billion people now. And that's why we're running out of food, running out of water.
Thanks for listening to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. If you'd like to ask Wa-Na-Nee-Che a question, you can email me at stuart@realityresponsibility.com. The link will be in the description. And don't forget, you can download a powerful guided meditation for free at humancircleoflife.com.